Under no circumstances are you to set foot outside this carriage.
Part 2 of episode 6 review starts now with that scene of Sydney telling Charlotte to stay inside the carriage. We should all know by now that Charlotte not gonna listen to his command.
Good evening, Mr. Parker.
You see how Sydney kind of turned around? I thought that he wanted to check and make sure that Charlotte wasn't following him. That's my prediction of why he did that.
Thank you, Mrs. Harris, but I'm not here for that.
Mr. Parker, what is this place?
I thought I told you to wait.
I decided against it.
And who is this? You haven't made an honest man of our Mr. Parker, have you?
Sydney was shocked to see Charlotte behind him, but I do want to make a note though, when he turned around to face Charlotte, the distance between them is closer than usual. I don't know if you feel the intensity between them in this scene when he turned around, just boom, right there. Of course, Charlotte did not listen to him. She willing to risk her life in saving her friend Georgiana. Funny though, she asked about what is this place. Again, she never been to a city. She never been to that type of place before, and this is a very eye-opening experience for her. And I think there's a good possibility that Sydney, one of the reasons Sydney did not want her to follow him is because of this place, this environment that she really doesn't know and shouldn't know, especially with the innocence that she has portrayed of herself and her personality. Also, I don't think her parents would have liked the idea of the daughter going to this type of place too. So again, she had that innocence within her still, and seeing her in that type of environment is definitely not normal for her.
Wait. You know something. Miss Lamb is my ward. You must tell me what you know.
You missed them by half an hour. If you're quick, you might catch them on the road to Scotland.
That look that Sydney gave to Charlotte at the end of the clip, what that looks like, I told you they are already on the way to Scotland, so that brings some intensity to the challenge in finding Georgiana. Now Sydney and Charlotte have to chase after this man that is holding Georgiana hostage.
Boarding house, you said? The idea of love. Something to be paid for.
That will do. If we stand any chance of catching them up, we should make haste. I don't suppose there's any point in telling you to stay behind, is there?
Charlotte views on love. If you remember that episode when Lady Denham threw the lunch party in honor of Miss Lamb, Lady Denham asked her, oh, what do you think of marriage and love and all that? Her views on that contradict to what she is seeing right now at the boarding house. So that's why she made that question to Sydney. This is not love. Love should not be bought. Money should not be involved in getting love from someone else. So it definitely a new big experience for Charlotte in going to this place in this episode.
We have nothing worth stealing.
I beg to differ.
Oh, no, you don't. She is my property.
I am no man's property. Least of all yours.
Thankfully, Georgiana was saved by Sydney, and if you watch the episode, Sydney was racing against the other carriage, trying to catch up to it, and with his two hands, guiding the horses, and he was able to catch up with them and take Georgiana out of the carriage. I'm pretty sure the two girls are happy to see each other again. One note I do want to mention before we moved on is that Georgiana said to that other guy in this clip, I'm not a man property, and it reminded me of the earlier episode at Lady Denham lunch party when she threw it in honor of Georgiana, and Georgiana shared her beliefs on love and marriage, and she doesn't believe that she should be anyone's property, especially a guy. So she had that fear of if she does marry a man, that she gonna lose her control on her freedom and her money, her fortune. She just doesn't believe in being tied to a man as a man wife, and she had that fear, and I think it's something that she had it for a long time. Her past experiences and her childhood, she had some trauma with what she went through, and in regard to love too as well. So she's like, nope, no one is buying me, no one is marrying me, like I'm good on my own for now as a independent single woman.
Hey, Miss Lamb and Miss Hayward. To what do I owe such a delightful... Good grief, eh?
Let's get the lady settled upstairs, shall we? Then I'll explain.
Yes, yes, of course. Please.
So we know they're back in London, and Tom have no idea what's going on. But Georgiana, she's going through a lot of emotion right now, physical trauma, the question of, do I have a future with Otis? That's a big one.
What will happen to Otis now? The debtor's prison? Worse?
He is no longer your concern.
Whatever he's done, I cannot just cauterize my heart. I'm not you.
Half of Georgiana, she still have love and care, compassion for Otis, but the other half of Georgiana, especially after what Sydney said to her, she started to question, like, do I have a future with Otis now? Like, is it worth it? Especially after what she went through.
At this moment, your world feels undone. I know that. But you must put him from your mind. Or you'll go mad. Excuse me.
It seems that Sydney is recommending her to move on from Otis and to forget about him and to forget about the situation, to not continue to fight for her love for Otis. And he made a good point. Like, if you overthink everything, you're gonna get bottled up in emotion that gonna overwhelm you, and you would get confused and you would go crazy. Hopefully Georgiana will come to that place of clarity and know what's best for her. What's best for Otis and Georgiana together is no longer exists. Now it's about Georgiana only. Like, what is best for her and for herself and for her future.
I can't pretend to understand the workings of a marriage. But what I do know is I would do anything to be blessed with a wife such as yours.
It's really nice to hear Sydney say that. To me, as a viewer, like, he's still open to the idea of marriage, and he still desired to settle down with a woman that is great at Mary. Sydney looked up to his brother Tom, and he also looks up to him and Mary as a role model in what a marriage looks like. It's not perfect. I mean, there are ups and downs in relationship and marriages, right? It happened to everyone. So Sydney knows that. But more than that, he sees the love and the partnership that Mary and Tom has, even though they go through the ups and downs in their marriage. It's really nice that Sydney sees Mary and Tom as an example to marriage, and I think that plays an important role to what he believes in regard to love in relationship. And that little smile though from Sydney at the end of this, I was thinking like, is he thinking about Charlotte? Because she's like the only single woman that is very suitable for Sydney that we know of on our TV screens. But it's really nice to hear this statement from Sydney because it really opened up a lot more of what Sydney wants in her future.
No wonder your brother has such a poor opinion of me.
I am certain that is not the case. Sydney can be hard to read, that is all. Here's a conundrum.
But a conundrum can be solved.
Tom talked to Sydney earlier, now he's talking with Charlotte, and I'm like, I don't remember this scene, but it's really fun to look back on it. And Tom is like the mediator between Charlotte and Sydney in this episode. But before this part though, Charlotte was complaining about herself and how she is naive and basically how she's been acting around Sydney, especially with the situation of Otis and Georgiana. She didn't listen to Sydney, like she's just blaming herself for everything that happened with her friend. And Sydney, of course, blaming Charlotte for what she said and what she did since the very beginning. But Tom was like, no, like, you know, don't be hard on yourself, and he explained more about Sydney.
He seems so determined to keep the world at arm's length.
That wasn't always the case. In his younger days, he was a very different man.
Mary has spoken of a broken engagement.
I remember after Charlotte met Sydney on that cliff walk, Sydney left, and Mary mentioned to Charlotte, like, don't assume that he is a bad, arrogant guy. Like, once you know him, he's like one of the best guys around. So Charlotte, like, okay, I would give him the benefit of the doubt, and since then, you know, many things has happened between Charlotte and Sydney.
Yes. Eliza. They were very much in love. But at the last moment, she passed him over in favor of an older and wealthier man.
And now Tom is explaining, like, Sydney was great when he was younger. He was a better man. He was so in love with this particular woman that Charlie doesn't know about, doesn't know her name until now. And it sounds like Sydney might be in his late 20s. The way that Tom mentioned his younger days, I assume is about his early 20s. That's my prediction. So Sydney definitely had that experience of falling in love and wanting to marry this woman, but it did not work out, and it left him heartbroken.
He set out on a rather self-destructive path. We were all greatly concerned. In the end, I paid his debts, and he sailed to Antigua in a bid to forget her. I fear the man he was never quite returned.
That explained the whole story of why and how Sydney is like that. This is a big reveal for Charlotte. I don't think she expected to hear that from Tom. And Tom mentioned about how Sydney had debts that needed to be paid, and that explains a lot why Sydney acted like that toward Otis when it came to the debts that Otis had to pay, and using Georgiana money to pay it off if he did end up marrying Georgiana. So Sydney, like, no, that's not gonna happen. He didn't want Georgiana to go on the same destructive path that he was on when he had debts to be paid. The family was worried about him. He was a young guy, and he got his heart broken, and it ruined him mentally and emotionally. Like, seeing someone you love pick the other man or the other woman, like, right in front of your face, that must hurt a lot. And I wonder, I mean, it's a good possibility that he kept distant from being committed to a very serious relationship. Like, who knows if he dated again after that, you know? But right now, it seems that he doesn't look for love. He not focused on finding another woman to settle down with. So Charlotte has more compassion for Sydney after this conversation. The look on her face, she felt that. She felt the hurt that Sydney went through when he got his heart broken. And I think it encouraged her to have more compassion, but not only that, to have a little bit more respect for Sydney, because you know how people say, like, you don't know the whole story, right? Like, don't judge a person by its cover. So that what basically happened in this scene. And I think this conversation played a role in changing the dynamic for Charlotte and Sydney relationship. And Sydney doesn't know, you know, this is happening, but it's a good thing for Charlotte's benefit.
I thought they at least deserved a proper party. This way, please.
Now Charlotte sees Otis arriving to the house. Charlotte seems surprised to see Otis there, and Sydney humbly said they deserve a good proper goodbye. And this is totally different to the other Sydney that we saw at the carriage stop when Otis came to Sanditon to visit Georgiana. He was yelling and commanding Georgiana to leave and to force Otis out of town and to never let him see Georgiana again. Like, it wasn't a proper goodbye. And now here we are, Sydney is making a peace offering opportunity for Otis and Georgiana to talk one last time and to have a closure with each other. And I think Charlotte was touched by that because of what happened the last time. And again, she had that conversation with Tom, and the way she looked at him, it wasn't like, you know, that tough Charlotte look. She just melted a little bit with Sydney after that conversation that she had with Tom.
What will you do now? How will you settle your other debts?
My debts have all been paid. I have been shown a kindness I do not deserve.
A transformation of Sydney in this scene, especially in this episode. Like, the first half, like, they still like attack each other, and now Charlotte is just like so humbled by what she is witnessing right now. Otis' debt being paid. I remember Tom saying that he paid off Sydney debts in his conversation with Charlotte before the scene, and basically Sydney followed that example and paid off Otis' debts. And I think it's because he wanted to say goodbye to Otis, like on a good term. He doesn't want this to end. He doesn't want to like burn the bridge between his family and Otis. And I think it was very nice of Sydney to do that. Like, he didn't have to. And I think another part to that is that him to realize that it wasn't entirely Otis' fault.
And you must come as well, of course, Miss Hayward.
Thank you, Lord Babington. But I'm really not in the mood to be sociable. Excuse me.
A drink, gentlemen.
Very nice of Lord Babington to invite Charlotte. Charlotte went through a lot emotionally in this episode, not only with Georgiana's disappearance and finally having her friend back, to Sydney paying the debts for Otis. It's the highs and lows for her in this episode. She was affected by what's going on as well. That look on Sydney's face is like he wanted her to go. And he seemed disappointed that she said no and that she left the room.
Tom sent me up in the hope that you might reconsider and come to the party tonight. The regatta was your idea after all.
My question though, did Tom really send him up, or did he really wanted to use Tom's name instead of, Sydney himself? Because from what I can tell in the last scene, like, he really wanted Charlotte to go, but of course Sydney's not gonna tell her that.
Why did you pay off Otis's debts?
I came to the realization that a good man shouldn't be condemned for one terrible mistake.
He agreed with Charlotte's statement that she said that Otis should not be condemned for this one mistake. I think she said it in one of their Harris scene in this episode. So he basically listened to her. He had open ears, even though he disagreed with her in the moment. It showed that he thought of it and came up with that conclusion, like, okay, you're right, like, he deserves a second chance. He's not entirely a bad guy. Like, I want to do the best I can for him, and also what he did, like, it gave Otis an opportunity to start fresh and be on a better path, and that he will not do that again, get involved with those type of people and being in debt again. So it's really nice that Sydney was honest. He opened up to her. He finally started to open up to Charlotte much more, I would say, in this episode.
Mr. Parker, I owe you an apology. I accused you of the worst kind of prejudice when it came to Otis.
I do not accept your apology.
Why not?
And I'm like, girl, like, he needs to apologize to you too. But it showed that she cared for everyone, and she doesn't want to be on a bad term with anyone that she encounters with. She's just that nice person.
Because I'm the one that should apologize. I've done you a great discourtesy, Miss Hayward. I've underestimated you.
Boom! He finally apologized to her. I've been waiting for that. That was the last scene for part 2 of episode 6 review. You see all the emotion and the looks on Charlotte. She was like, what? Like, why is this happening? Like, this never happens. But good for Sydney though. It's really nice when a man realizes when he makes a mistake or he says something wrong and he apologizes to a woman. It takes a lot of guts and courage for him to do that in this scene. And Charlotte was very surprised, and she was very accepting of his apology, and she knew it, like, you should say something too. But Sydney, it took him a while to admit and to be honest and apologize to her, and that was really a pure and deep, honest apology that he did say to her. And again, the transformation of Sydney, wow, what a good twist, a great transformation of Sydney in this episode. For the first 5 episodes of season 1, he was pain in the butt to Charlotte, and Charlotte had a lot of patience with him, and he had a lot of patience with her too. But it's nice to see that equalness between these two by the end of this scene. I'm so excited for part 3. The next video will be the last part for episode 6. The next one will be the ball scene. It's gonna be a fun one. Can't wait to talk about it. See you very soon.